I think in general, we have underprepared leaders to lead.
Mhm.
It's like if I'm in accounting, I'm good at accounting, so you put me in charge of a team. Well, being good at a topic doesn't make you ready to lead the team. There's people are complicated. And so a lot of leaders are stressed or under pressure, and it comes out in our emotions, and we don't realize we're impacting others. If we don't take good care of our own emotions,
Yeah.
then a lot of times it's like if we don't manage them, they manage us.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Cheryl Jekiel. Cheryl is the founder of the Lean Leadership Center, where she helps people-centric organizations integrate continuous improvement into their systems and culture. She has spent the last several years building an innovative leadership development approach that has successfully generated leaders who are capable of coaching their teams to work independently. She lives in the Chicago area. And Cheryl, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Hi, Keith. Glad to be here. I'm excited. I love
Wonderful.
to.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. Sometimes with these interviews, I get introductions in different ways. And honestly, before this interview a couple of days ago, I can't remember exactly where I got introduced to your work, but I do have a copy of your book. And I am thinking this is so timely for me because as a leader, I think that this topic of letting go to lead is probably one that I need to spend a little time. So this might be a therapy session a little bit for myself. So we like to start the podcast with a little section we call the Spark. I know that you're an author and you're a consultant. I'm guessing that wasn't your first professional job. You probably started somewhere else. Tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this area that you're so interested and passionate about now.
Wow. It's one of my funner stories. It's an old one, though, by the way. My first car was a Ford LTD, and everything broke on it. I didn't make that much money at the time. And I remember one of the last things that broke, I pulled on the handle in the winter, and the handle pulled off. And when I took it to the Ford mechanic, he said, "Well, they're made to break at about 50,000 miles." And I was like, why would you make a car that has designed in failure? It's probably just a phrase. So my next car was a Toyota, and nothing broke on it. And so there was a big difference between something breaking about every other month and the car went, 50,000 miles and nothing went wrong. So that's the kind of people. So I don't know. I think it was from the very beginning as I learned about continuous improvement, especially Toyota. To me, it was really the difference between things that break and things that don't. And it mattered. But I mean, I'm mostly a culture person, but for some reason, I always say like my love of this work started, well, because I started to learn and they said, well, they work in teams. And when things broke, they got together in teams and they figured out why. And they, over time, just kept getting rid of all the things that break. And I was like, well, that's genius. And it's still genius a lot of years later.
So great. I know that, I read that you had been involved in a major transformation.
Mhm.
And it seems like that was a pretty influential experience. Was that a
I would call it life changing.
life change? Okay, life change.
I was
That's
just
pretty
like,
important.
I mean, I was in human resources and just kind of getting the lay of the land. And we did 1 week of TQM. That's back in the days this work was called TQM. When I first learned about zero defects, shortly thereafter, I was in charge of retirement plans and we issued out statements for 6,000 employees and there was an error in it. Like the numbers didn't add. And of course, I was mortified. My life flashed before my eyes. But the head of HR said something to me at first I took great offense to. He said, "So what are you going to do so this never happens again?" And I thought, I was like, and he said, "No, no, I mean it. I mean it literally. Like, what could you do so this never happens again?" And so I took all this angst and shame and whatever over this mistake and just rerouted it into changing the flow of how the work was done and error proofed this from happening again. And so then that was like, again, my first huge taste of what this feels like. Because again, it was about how bad I felt in putting that energy into like how to fix it. And then from there, it wasn't too long after that same week, I went back to my office, like I shared an office with several people back in those days. And the person next to me was a file clerk. And we don't have those probably very much anymore. But her full time job was filing for 6,000 people. And I asked some just simple questions whether the things she filed had copies elsewhere. How often was anybody using this? We literally designed that job out of existence in like an hour and then just redeployed her to something else. And it's not about filing and it's not about, for me, it was like, what a waste of that life, of that person's gifts to spend their days filing something that nobody is even looking for. And then we just had her do something else. I mean, it was definitely not like she lost her job. We just had her do something more value added. So again, from the beginning, I saw this work as a way to get rid of blame and a way to get rid of self blame and a way to have people do work that matters.
I like that phrase, work that matters. You strike me as somebody who is excited about their work and interested in their work. What is it, would you say, that you find most interesting? What is it that has like your enthusiasm and passion about this work?
I mean, it's certainly the people part. I would say, even going back to these times, there it was we changed how work was done, and yes, there were process changes, but what I saw is people in the plant who had jobs that struck me as, the plant was dark and it was, not well lit and loud, and it smelled because it made straws, and so you had the smell of melting plastic, and it was just a hard place to work. Well, as we did this work, those same people with jobs like packing cups all day or watching a straw machine all day, where you just mostly watch a piece of equipment, I saw them just come alive. I saw them find their purpose, find skills. One day I always talk about there was this man, his name was Peter. He was a forklift driver. He'd been running, like a continuous improvement team, a quality based team. We enlarged all the jobs. So people who had jobs that were very simple started to do their own quality, their own preventative maintenance, all of that. And he said he had been talking to his family the night before, and he put his shoulders back and his chest out, and he said, "I didn't know I could do this." And he was talking about running the team, and I thought, what a waste it would be for someone like that with all his people skills and ingenuity and resourcefulness to be just a forklift driver. Not that there's anything wrong with driving a forklift. I just meant I saw that many jobs are very narrow. And I've loved the way this work basically really lets people experience a lot more of themselves. I always say the fact that it's good for the business and saves money and stuff is just nice. Like that's a good thing. I just would never be this passionate about efficiency or how to make things smarter or something. People's lives are usually really impacted in a positive way.
I think that that resonates with me a lot as true as well. I think that there's this. I think I made a note of something I read in your book that feels like a shared belief that improving somebody's work life has a tendency to like improve their whole life, and
Yeah,
in ways
absolutely.
that they might not have thought, that that training that you were showing them at work is gonna change what they think about possibilities in life. And what you were just talking about, I think, is a good example. I think some people get into these jobs and sometimes they might
Mhm.
tend to be like manual labor jobs where maybe they've been told like, you're only gonna be able to do this. Oh, you're never gonna go to college. You're just gonna be stuck doing this thing. And for some reason they have this belief that that's all they can do. And then you come in with these training events, and I think that's one of the interesting things is when you do start engaging them in the work, and it unlocks all of this unutilized human potential that exists in every workplace. Such
Yeah,
a
but
good
I always, when I mentioned the thing about it, so and when his shoulders went back and his chest went, I was like, you feel maybe more proud of yourself or more engaged with life. I don't think it's just about the skill itself. It's
yeah.
like, how does it feel to know things about yourself you didn't know? And again, I've always said there's people all over the place that have all kinds of hidden skills that you just can't see. It's all buried under work that's usually fairly narrowly defined. I'm a payroll clerk or I'm a I'm a receptionist or I do accounting or I do HR, even HR. A lot of them, it's like a lot of HR people feel very limited. Might say just do nothing but recruiting or nothing but benefits. And so they don't spread their wings the way that this work calls them to. You can do
Do you think that tendency to have, like, narrowly defined jobs is even, I don't know, say worse is the right word, but more prevalent in bigger companies? Like, the bigger company is, the more narrowly defined things are?
I mean, not from my experience. I think it's the way work has been constructed. It's like we have a set of tasks, like, we have to get this work done. And so we hire people to do that work. And yet, when we talk about having a team of problem solvers, like people, if everyone in the
Mhm.
organization knew more about the customers or more about the organization and the flow, and, I'll say we want everyone to be a problem solver. What that means, they have to understand more things, do more things, interact with people. I think it's the nature of work has not, if it's not designed to be a team of problem solvers, then it's just do the thing I've asked you to do. We have job descriptions and we have these things on this list that we want you to do out of people capable of identifying problems, solving problems, interacting with each other, coming up with different ways of doing things. I mean, the human, all your humans are capable of far beyond any generally narrow defined role.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and we getting into the topic of your book, the, Let Go to Lead, is that, in these organizations, the bigger organization, the more if you're gonna be successful and maintain your status, you're supposed to be the problem solver, the one that knows how to do it, the one with all the answers, and it sounds like that as a solution is also part of the problem. So how do you navigate that change as somebody who's like, "Oh, okay, I have the answers,"
Yeah.
and when do you realize, like, that
Yeah.
you gotta do more than just have the answers?
I mean, first of all, I think it's a prevalent part of leadership everywhere. Like, it's not like a you thing or a me thing or just in that industry or just in the United States. It's prevalent around the world of leaders oftentimes finding themselves like, they must have put me in leadership because I'm smarter or I'm more capable or I have to. Or people feel like when my team needs me, that's a good thing because somebody's paying me to support them and I feel good when I support them. So I always think the type of leadership this work calls us to, you have to let go of those things. Even though I think it's just the most human thing in the world for people to feel, that's a difficult process because the other feels good. And changing to saying, I feel good because my team doesn't need me. Again, it's a nice idea. Not everybody gets there without a process. It helps when a group is clear, like that's our mission. Like if a group of leaders could all be on a same idea that that's our goal instead of, I've been promoted and if nobody tells me otherwise, I keep thinking they want me to be a good problem solver until someone tells me otherwise, right? So you have to change that. But I have found when they support one another, like in the difficulty, the challenge, they definitely make progress. So it's knowing I call it top down, right, left, everybody's in that same process. So, and most of the time it's not like that. It's more like a few are doing it, a lot aren't. A lot of, I mean, my background is in the role of HR in continuous improvement. That has everything to do with if you don't change how leadership is defined, how it functions, then you're going to have fairly traditional ideas. They're going to keep giving you what you said you wanted, which was heroics, superhuman skills. You can save the day. Um, I can pull it out of the mud. It's all that's the stuff that a lot of people get rewarded for.
That's interesting. So on this topic, I wanna move down these paths a little bit, but maybe you could describe or define the difference between, like, training versus coaching versus this type of leadership that you're an advocate of. Could you maybe help somebody explain the difference between what training versus coaching or this type of leadership that you promote?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to give you the way we define it, which is not
Sure.
the right way, right? There's not a right way, but it is helpful sometimes if you have definitions so you can pull them apart. So one is directing, right? So we might say, if I just tell people what to do, but sometimes you do need to tell people what to do. If it's dangerous or they're brand new and they don't know how to do the job at all, they just have to tell them. Training is they're developing skills. It could be a new task. It could be a new job, but we obviously have to train if they don't know. Coaching is more, letting you solve your own problem. Mentoring is the one people get the most, like, what's the difference between there? When we think about coaching and the work we do, it's coaching means you can solve your own problem if I mostly support you in getting there. I'm going to ask you questions and help you get there on your own. Mentoring might be here's what I would do if I were you, or here's what I've done in the past. None of these are right or wrong. The issue is the coaching muscle is the least developed most of the time. We know how to train. I even definitely know how to tell people what to do. And I pretty much know how to mentor. People like to mentor, they like to share their experience. Resisting all those urges to just, I'm going to ask you questions and you'll solve it for yourself, that's hard for a lot of people. It's just a skill that needs to be built. And the idea is also in one conversation, you could move between those. Someone could ask you a question. You may say, I don't know if they know how to do it. So I need to ask a question or two and find out they need training or they don't need training. If I just support them, they'll figure this out. If I just ask them some questions.
So your book, Letting Go to Lead, you've got 6 habits that you mention are important. Do you want to share what those are?
They're all rooted in what I witnessed leaders do who become adept at letting go to lead. So for instance, one is you teach people to fish instead of feed them. So that's kind of an analogy many people, but that's one thing you're going to see is you're always like they put your time and energy for them to do it themselves, even if it's hard that I need them to do this for themselves. So whatever the task, I'm teaching them to do it for themselves. So like that's a predominant one. Um, there's other habits about you want to do less helping, more work by inspiration. So inspire your team instead of help them so much. So a little less helping, more inspiration. Me, I believe in you. Here's your task. I call it goal based leadership, meaning here's the parameter. We need this done. It needs to be done this way. This is how much money you have, how much time you have. Here's what's important. You need to keep people informed. But then you go do it. You go instead of I'm really telling you exactly what I want done. That means most of the time you're going to end up being uncomfortable that they do it differently than you would have done it. You're giving them the parameters that matter and knowing they'll probably find their own way and it's very rarely your way. And you start to realize I always say to people, this is like getting very comfortable being uncomfortable. It's not comfortable to let go. Might be the best way to lead, but it's not very comfortable. So those are just a couple of the habits. I think the part that I also find really interesting about the work, the book also has 4 dynamics or elements that I found made the difference to building these habits. I mean, and these aren't new habits. You might say, well, everybody knows we need to teach them to fish for themselves, right? Doing it's hard. And so there's 4 things that we found made a difference. And that's really one of the things I'd really like people to be aware of. So, and they're not going to be a mystery necessarily either. One is practice. So, coaching skills are mostly built from repetition, practice, practice, practice. It's not like you go to, try it on Monday and you'll make it a habit. You need to do it every day, all day, over time, it becomes a habit. So, it's realizing we don't arrive. Lean leaders aren't done developing. It's like you need to stay with it. Um, Change what feels good. We talked about that a few minutes. You got to change what feels good. The community piece, I think, is critical. Um, I've been experimenting with this the last several years. It doesn't cost anything necessarily, and it doesn't take a ton of structure, like spend an hour with each other or in a small with a buddy group once a month. Um, I just don't think most organizations are designed for leaders to really talk to each other about
Yeah.
what's going on.
Especially now with more remote people. That's a good
They're
one.
isolated. So community, I just can't say enough. That's really part of the name of this game. And the last one is I call it be on your own side. Um, Changing behavior is just naturally discouraging. It's hard. Like I try, I don't succeed. I did it one day, not the next. Most of the time when I've been working with the leaders, they'll be like something's wrong with me. I tried it and I didn't do it. I could have coached and I gave them the answer. And so they beat up on themselves and I'm like, you need to stop that. You've got a gentle. And I didn't realize until time had gone by, people were like, well, that was really important for them. For somebody just saying, it's all okay. It's all
You know,
okay.
Along those lines, I mean, this is one thing that I find is interesting. Like, you go from being the person that knows how to do the thing the best, and then they say, "Hey, the manager left. You come be the manager," right? You kind of get thrown into this thing, and you have this mindset of you're supposed to be the one with the answers. How, as a leader, do you get feedback on your interactions with your team? Is it okay to ask them to give you feedback on how well you're doing at these things? Like,
Oh, absolutely,
what are some advice that you have
absolutely.
on how to get the feedback that you need to hear on how you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are very specific little habits. So the other thing is these are, so we always have leaders pick some particular thing that might be working on your listening skills, asking more questions, maybe being better at providing the parameters, the goalposts for people to work within, whatever those are. When you're working on those habits, it's just creating that framework of getting, like we're saying, well, you need support, and then a lot of times, how will you know if you're successful? And it's the people you work with, it's asking them, am I asking more questions? Do you see me listening better? Um, we have very specific techniques around maybe if you want specific feedback, get clear what you want to know, help the people you're going to ask for feedback know what you want to know. Like I'm trying to grow as a leader. I'd like feedback around either how clear are my expectations? Do you feel supported by me or whatever you want to know? Let them think about it, and then you would have a meeting and ask open-ended questions, and then do the real hard thing, which is listen and not get, you know, don't defend or explain and just take it all in.
In my prep, I had some notes about I wanted to ask you about kind of where you're going right now with this idea of I forget the words you used. I kind of in my head I'm thinking kind of lean into the challenge. Like you don't build muscles by not putting your muscles under pressure. You don't become a better leader without putting yourself into hard leadership situations. So you kind of have to like lean into that hard thing. But you said something about I think it was like avoiding the reactivity or how to prepare yourself to avoid the reactivity.
Yeah, you just wanna be ready to breathe through it. Literally, one of the exercises we do is they practice doing it in their room. They put themselves in a position they'd be receiving the feedback, and they practice feeling that feeling of, like, I want to explain, I want to defend, and I just don't. I just ask another curious question, or I just stay still, I just relax. They all know that the moment they start explaining, the feedback stop. They all know that, but they also again, we all know that's a hard thing, but the more they all talk about it, it is hard. We're all trying it. We all have a hard time. The better they get stronger and more courageous when they're doing this together. Like we're all seeking feedback and we're all opening ourselves to that. Most of the times, by the way, even leaders who are very, have had, might be very top down, very directive to
Yeah.
people. Maybe sometimes they've said they've burnt some bridges. If you most the time invite a team into your growth and ask for their help, they will just bend over backwards to help. If you just
Especially if
humble,
you ask them what you're doing wrong.
right. What am I doing? What do I need to do better? Will you help? And almost 10 out of 10 times, yes, we'll help. If you are earnestly asking for help, yes, we'll help.
I love what you said there about it just takes practice because, again, if we apply this to maybe like a sports analogy of Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, if you say, "Hey, Michael Jordan, why are you so good at basketball?" It's not that he
Right.
shoots with like some special technique. It's just that he practiced it a lot more than somebody else. With leadership, let's say there's somebody who's like new that, early in their leadership journey, they just got promoted and they think, oh my gosh, I'm the only one who thinks this way. I'm the only one that deals with this challenge. But maybe those are some things that you've seen in, very high level people. What are some of those thoughts that go through their head as a leader that,
Well, I don't think it's just new leaders. I think most leaders, from my experience, seem to think everyone else is having an easier time than they are. I actually think even very talented, effective leaders oftentimes carry self doubt of like, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. They can be hard on themselves. That's why one of the things we talk about. I definitely think as they come into it, I think in general we have underprepared leaders to lead. It's like if I'm in accounting, I'm good at accounting, so you put me in charge of a team. Well, being good at a topic doesn't make you ready to lead the team. There's people are complicated. We don't do it in the maintenance department. We don't put people over really expensive, complicated equipment without a background in it. So I think some of it is we haven't necessarily prepared them for how to really understand people, support people, know what to do to be effective with people.
Along those lines, are there, I'm kind of thinking of them as like blind spots. Like, are there things that you see? Like, I think I'm a pretty assertive, respectful leader. And then all of a sudden I get humbled all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I totally didn't even realize that I was doing this thing. Like, what are some of the blind spots that you see, even experienced senior leaders who come back too
Oh,
frequently
yeah.
and have to continue to work on?
Well, two we work on a lot are managing your emotions. So even for myself, not even that long ago, I was quite humbled when one of my teammates made it clear, like she had been taking things I said to mean she was making me mad or upset or wasn't doing a good job. All it really was is she was around a topical area that I'm frustrated about. I didn't realize, even with all my background, that I was taking that frustration out on her. It was coming through in my tone, and I'm thinking I'm upset about this thing, and she thinks I'm upset about her. I'm like, how would the other person not know that? And so a lot of leaders are stressed or under pressure, and it comes out in our emotions, and we don't realize we're impacting others. Now I know that, but I was doing it like unconsciously. I didn't really realize it until I had that humbling moment of going, "Wow, that is not the impact on people I'd like to have." So it's really, if we don't take good care of our own emotions, then a lot of times, if we don't manage them, they manage us. So if we're not aware I'm angry or I'm frustrated or under stress, then a lot of times it is coming out. It's just coming out sideways.
Yeah, that's a good topic. Do you have any advice for how to ask for that feedback? Like for people that generally want to improve and you want to go to your team and say, "Hey, how can I get better?" Is there a
I mean, first of all, that's one, a lot of times, those are issues of psychological safety. You were asking me, like, what are common situations leaders at all levels and all types find? It's our emotions. By the way, the second topic that gets in the way is I call judgments. We don't necessarily talk about it a lot, but we're all carrying judgments about things. And again, people can feel it. They can tell, oh, you don't think that person's smart, or you don't think that's, they can tell by our expressions, our mannerisms, what we say. They know what we think about things. So again, I think, and I've seen teams have like that openness and safety, which is what a lot of you're seeking is a place to feel safe. It's owning, there's more transparency about those things. You're not going to not be judgmental, but you're aware when you feel judgmental and you might speak to it and then do better. Especially department to department, like that department, them, are we talking negatively about other groups, other
yeah.
companies? And then just saying, it's not on them. We need to be doing our part, not waiting for the other department to do, to be better. So I think it's just a lot of owning that or asking people if you see me doing that, let me know.
Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. So, one of the topics of improvement is asking people for ideas. This is a very, important part of continuous improvement is engaging the people that work for you. And you mentioned something about like the emotions, and I'm kind of picturing myself asking somebody for an idea, and then the idea they share with me is a terrible idea. I'm like, oh, we're not doing that. That's stupid. We tried that 2 years ago. That's obviously like probably not the right way to react to the idea. How do you recommend that people engage those ideas, either if it's a great idea or if it's maybe not such a great idea? Is there a different way to handle
I
those?
mean, in general, it would be what you're thinking it is. Idea for idea, you wanna take the idea in, realize they're precious, they're valuable. If you're not careful with the one idea, they're not quick to give you the second, ever. So if each person, whenever they're giving you that idea, you have to be really careful with it. We all know that. The problem is, I always say, they've, let's say, suggested we paint the cafeteria black, then it's like, well, that's not a good idea. So we have to kind of learn to override that and say, well, why do you want to do that? Ask questions, look for any aspect of the idea that is workable. Most ideas aren't 100% bad, but even if you found a way, well, maybe, let's say they say, "We wanna paint the cafeteria, maybe it's not that color." Oh, well, then let's explore, let's get some other people's ideas about whether we wanna paint the cafeteria and what color it might be. So it's really not reacting to that like, "Oh, that's not a good idea." It's like, where are there elements to work from? But I think the bigger issue with this is in continuous improvement, we're often saying, "Let's go grab ideas." If you think of a typical leader in a busy day, between meeting, lots of pressure and people handing them ideas, that's the challenge. It's not one simple idea at a time that I'm fixed and ready to give you my best response and my best moment to every idea. I'm getting in more ideas faster and I'm not necessarily slowed down enough. So, a lot of times, what we're talking about is if they're that precious and that valuable, we have to kind of be on alert for how we're responding to it, like practice how we were going to respond to these ideas and being careful that the last message you want to give them is it's a bad idea or it's not important to me that you gave it to me or it's not that valuable. I mean, even in those first experiences we talked about at the beginning of this, I remember one of them, I gave a suggestion. I got kind of a we've tried that, doesn't matter, and I never spoke to that leader I mean, I wasn't mad, I just said, "You obviously don't care what I have to say." I just never spoke to them again. And I'm like, a lot of people, that's their experience. If they come to you once with an idea and you shut them down, okay, I'm out.
Is there like, if you were to teach me, role play this with me of like, what is a good way to handle an idea that, first of all, I'm not gonna have a negative facial reaction. I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, that's terrible." But what might I say to that person to make sure that I don't shut them down entirely and, continue to try again?
Curious, be curious, ask questions. And sometimes even just good listening skills, like look directly at the person, stop what you're doing, undivided attention, let them know how much you value the idea. Be curious about the idea, ask more questions. Now, from there, the tricky part also is making sure if I'm going to get back to you, under how am I going to get back to you? Am I writing it down somewhere? Because the next place we drop the ball is they gave you the idea, we talked about it, and then they're like, "Where did the idea go?" And you're like, "Well, it went out my brain when I walked away from this situation. It's gone." So a lot of the environments I've seen that do great jobs with this, it gets written down usually in a visible way. It's not in my notebook. It's we get those up on the whiteboard. Oh, that's a good idea. Or put that on an idea card. Or put that. Let those go here, and they get stuck somewhere visibly, and it doesn't go away till we have figured out what to do with that idea. Because you start to realize the most precious thing in the workplace are those ideas. So we have to just treat them like what they are, and you take care of it until it's been carried to its eventual home, even if it's you had an idea to do something a different way, and we've come to the conclusion we can't do it like that. But you'd want that person to feel like we gave it all the consideration it was due.
What advice or what have you seen work in terms of how to actually implement a coaching structure inside of an organization? I mean, I guess if you have
Yeah.
from the top down, what are the top leaders, what behavior should they do on what sort of cadence to make sure that it gets like repeated in the organization?
Well, I mean, this approach to what we might call coaching, per se, coaching as you can solve your own problem if I help you do that, like I'm a sounding board. That is the basic skill there is. I mean, some of this surprised me until I did a lot of this work. I wouldn't have guessed that was it. It's asking open ended questions. So some of it is all leaders at all levels practicing more open-ended questions more of the time. Now, we all know what an open-ended question is, but we don't actually naturally ask them that much. People start to say, I ask a lot more close-ended questions than open. So fundamentally, it's building that skill. I mean, even if you become a certified coach, you're partly very skilled at good open-ended questions. I think the difference from a continuous improvement mentality of like COD or other continuous improvement use of questions, this is every day, all day. It's not the answer to every situation, but it is much more of the time. Any given time, how many opportunities a day could you have asked an open-ended question to get more information, open the relationship, show respect, rather than, if you ask me a question, I just tell you the answer, that kind of a thing. And, being better listeners. The second skill, most leaders all need to be that coach for the next person is to be good at listening. We practice reflective listening. Have you ever heard of that term,
Oh
reflective?
yeah.
Yeah. So we have leaders practicing good reflective listening. Again, it's a deep skill, it's a powerful skill. I call it the money skill. Being able to have a person feel like I've understood you. I really get what you're saying, that's the power of those two very basic skills. So if you said we want to see everybody, even our team leads getting that level of support, it's building that skill set, practice, drills. Those are drills. Most of the sports, by the way, I'm also not a sports analogist, but I have used them. I do think of they're like drills. This is the essential, like, do it over and over and over again. It's asking open-ended questions and being good listeners, when people are speaking.
Yeah, from the perspective of, measuring these things, because some of this stuff feels like, uh, I guess, I mean, you could kind of describe it as soft skills or like there's a lot of subject to it, subjectivity to it, a lot of style to it, you might say. But, are there some things that are measurable in this that an organization might be able to point to and say, "Hey, we're trying to do more of this," let's just say we read Cheryl's book or we had Cheryl's company come in and we're doing
What are
this.
you measuring?
Where could we see the results? Like, what kind of things should we see moving in our organization, or what could we measure to see what kind of an impact it's having? What kind of
Well, there's the big ones, like if you measure engagement in any shape, way, or form. All of these things trigger a more engaged environment because really much of these things that we've been talking about all drive engagement levels. Um, I imagine mostly have some sense it means how much are people feeling internally connected to their work? Do they have a sense of meaning and purpose in their work? Do they feel like they matter? Those kinds of things. It's not the same as like award systems or bonus systems and all of those. Those are more extrinsic motivations. So they're internally motivated. You'll see usually certainly better attendance and better lower turnover. What I've seen pragmatically, I've seen in leadership that I think is the coolest is it'll usually go from if you have a leadership opening, it's a struggle to get people to want into that path because that's just a place to like have endless commitment. Everybody just wants something from you. Like a lot of times, first line supervisory positions don't look very appetizing. It's make a little bit more money, maybe, and for a whole lot more pressure,
a
right?
lot of headaches sometimes?
A lot of headaches. This has created, like if it's a place of supportive community and I build skills and I don't feel alone and we're all doing this together, they line up to get in there. So I've seen where you could start to say, when there's an opening, how big's the line to get at the next people leadership role? And if that grows, then that's a really meaningful, a lot of companies or organizations need more leaders
Those are
to
good
grow.
one. You shared a couple of really good examples there. One of my first thoughts was, is this something that you measure with a survey? Like, do you ask people, do they feel engaged? Do you ask people? But then you said things like attendance, right? Attendance is one of those things that you can measure. That's one that I've seen before where companies that have what you might call good cultures tend to have better attendance. The one about openings, like I've seen people measure things like what percent of our job openings are filled by like internal promotions, depending on how they measure. That's another one that I think is maybe not as intuitive as, it's logical, but maybe not intuitive that you can see how great of it is this place to work that people want to grow and progress. Are there some other ones that come to mind that were either like very interesting connections to real results with work that you've seen or
I mean, I love groups measuring levels of involvement of people. Like, again, all of us, if you were successful in creating more independent people, Um, things that's tricky about idea generation is just counting ideas. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to tell what you're actually measuring if these
yeah,
instead of either implemented or improvements that were made through, basically ideas that were implemented by groups of people other than leaders. I've seen a lot of really interesting ways of getting closer to how are we seeing broader participation in helping things get better. So it's making sure that the metrics aren't like you can't just get the numbers, like how many
yeah.
people went through problem solving training, but we're still roughly the same. It has to be we're having a really difference in how people are involved in that. So you want to make sure those metrics are really getting at the heart of what you really want to see, which is people identifying problems, helping to solve problems, and helping to implement problems, solutions. So those kinds of things. I think having bigger leadership bench strength is certainly. I mean, the other thing we have sometimes, if you said we have 100 leaders, and we said if we evaluate them as let's say the team above a certain layer on a scale of 1 to 5, how well are they performing as leaders? If that number, if we start saying a lot more of them are successful, um, they feel successful and we assess them as successful. So there's those kinds of things. Because a lot of times you also end up with, again, I have an HR background. There could be sometimes, I don't know, a pretty good chunk of supervisors that people are like, these people should not be supervisors. They're really not able to do this. They can't do the people part of the roles. So when those things improve, you're improving the whole culture. What do they say? People don't quit jobs, they quit their supervisors,
Yeah.
and not because they're horrible people, it's just because 'cause they're not effective at doing that role.
From the HR perspective there, I'm kinda curious if here's the framing for my question. Like, when you know something really well, you have an intuition about it, and when you start to see a pattern happen, you're like, "That means something could be happening." Of course, in big companies, you've got a lot of managers doing a lot of different things, so you could almost say that the culture is very micro, like, the culture can be different under one manager than it is under another. Are there warning signs that somebody in HR or somebody with a broader perspective on the company might look at and say, I think we have a problem with leadership skills or something?
Yeah,
What are
they
some of
quit.
those warning
They
signs?
they start to quit. You'll see it in pocket, they'll start to jump ship.
Like
They'll
3 people quit on a team under
they'll
the
just
same
start and if
manager?
if you get anywhere close to 'em in an exit interview, they'll be like, and it can either be that they're being, it could be very toxic behaviors, like they're yelling at us or something like that, or it could mean they're not empowering us at all. We have ideas and they don't listen to us. They think they know everything. So, especially, it is interesting to me. If people had more effective leaders that were more empowering and more supportive and and let them take risks and try new things, and then the next leader is more won't let any of that, says, no, 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 you're going to do it my way or the highway. They'll start quitting. They're like, no, no, no. They're now used to enjoying their work and they don't want to do that anymore. And so they'll jump. And I always think, it should be somewhat obvious if you're just looking around that you just lost how many people out of one department. And if you ask them why, it had something to do with the leader. It's not that hard to find it.
So just
I always think it's
resignations,
not hidden
terminations.
really. They might either leave or maybe sometimes start to see the engagement survey results in an area really tank in a particular area. And I don't think we need to fire all those leaders. They just need help. They need more support, more guidance.
What about the opposite of that? I mean, I've heard things like, great managers are good at getting people promoted from under there. So, um, applications to other promotions could be a mixed signal, right?
That is another metric that's a good one to check. How much are people, to your point, promoting from within, developed within, and where do you see leaders successfully having people? Because remember, I said if you're going to be the problem solver, that means I was rewarded for being the greatest problem solver. Compared to are you holding me accountable for developing people into higher levels of leadership? And so, if I was held accountable for that, then I would be probably more ready to develop them. That's what you're paying me for.
What does it look like for an organization to hold their leaders accountable for developing people as opposed to just for results?
I mean, at leader standard work, you start to see like I'm as a leader spending time with my leader in coaching. I'm held accountable to how much, literally one on ones every week with my team. We're talking through what am I talking to them about? How am I helping them? I think it's a lot of recognition and expectation around that your team can do things without you. Like, yes, there's a problem, and my team did this, this, and this. It's not I did this and this. And that if you weren't working that way, you're being coached to how can you help your team work without you. One place it'll always show up is if you say, can we go off site for a day? Some environments like, oh no, we could never go off site for a day. We have to be here all
I
the
can't get
time.
away.
And then we're like, well, that's just a sign that your team requires you to be in the building to function instead of usually the more empowering leaders are like, I could be gone for a week. This team does not need me to get through the day. They know how to handle problems. They know how to do everything. That's
That's
the fastest way to check the temperature.
That's such an interesting kind of paradox, I guess, is that what's kind of the analogy, like the duck that looks calm on top, but the legs are spinning underneath. Like sometimes the leaders that look like they're not doing anything are the ones that are actually doing the best because their teams are really high functioning.
Absolutely, and that's why people are like, "Well, how could you be gone a week and nobody cares?" And I'm like, "Well, because if they're waiting on me to get through the day, then we're in the wrong place." But right, it looks like, how could they not need you? That's exactly what it is.
That's interesting. It sounds like leadership is a very nuanced topic.
But actually, my thing is, I call it's a team sport.
Yeah,
Leadership is a team sport.
that's great.
It's not meant to be done.
I just love the idea that you don't have to be the one that has all the answers, right? Like it's a job that needs to be done on the team, just like any other job that needs to be done on the team, and it requires a certain set of skills, and you have to practice them and be good at them, just like any other.
Yep,
It's
yep,
so good.
yep,
Well, Cheryl, I've got just a little round. I call these the rapid fire. These are just kind of short questions, kind of top of mind answers.
okay.
The most important job of a leader is to.
Um, believe in people, believe in their people.
That's a great answer. Do you have a favorite go-to, like, problem-solving tool, technique, or something that you find yourself turning to?
I am an A3 person. I'm a traditionalist, I call it. I trained in A3s. I still love A3s. Yeah, I mean, I like kata and some others, but I just tend to gravitate towards A3. The book Managing to Learn by John Shook was life-changing for me, so I've just
You just read my mind. My next question was, what's one book you recommend? Do you wanna share that one again?
Managing to Learn by John Shook. It's about A3 problem solving, but it shares more of some of the, it's the nuances to your point about things that it's not just what's in the box. In fact, one of the things John says in there is like, it's not about the form, it's not about the boxes, it's about a way of thinking. So, yeah, it's one of my favorite books of all the
That,
contents.
like a structured problem-solving approach, basically,
Yes.
yeah, I love that
Yeah.
idea. Finish this sentence, "Continuous improvement is"
Never ending, I
never
guess.
ending.
I guess it's
It's a
kind of
great one.
obvious, maybe.
It's continuous.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Do you have a favorite question?
Boy, that's I don't know, we're quite I often, when I'm speaking with people, will ask them more like I'm often curious what things mean, where things have meaning for them. I'm always interested when people are excited or engaged. What is it? And so I'll oftentimes ask people like, what about this, has you light up? What about this it makes you passionate about it? And I love those answers.
Cheryl, it's kinda like you're reading my notes right now. Because my next question for you, you won't believe it, is what are you most fired up or excited about?
It is. I must part. Well, I'm working on my dissertation. I'm in my graduate. I'm getting a doctorate, and I'm just about to start my dissertation, which is on non-role based leadership, and it's on mental models or paradigms we have as leaders about leadership that get in the way of us empowering others. So I'll be doing my doctoral research on this topic. I am.
I love
Yes,
it.
hopefully in about a year from now, it'll all be over. So, this summer, I will be starting my research. So I'm excited about that.
What is something that you believe about leadership that you find is maybe not a common belief?
Mostly I think that it's hard. I think we tend to speak about it like, it should be not that hard. Like, all the things we just said should be, like, should be able to do it. It should be, I think it's way harder than we talk about. It takes a lot more working through tough things and tough situations and overriding instincts to control and all that. I think the desire to control is as natural as breathing. Why would you want to let go? That makes no sense. So I think most people we're not recognizing the way we need to how hard it actually really is to be an effective leader.
That's so true. That's so true. And especially the part about it being unnatural, like it really is something that you have to focus on doing and not just once, but continuously.
Yeah, it's hard.
And just when you think you got it all figured out, you need to realize that you're just starting at the bottom step again. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us and telling us some fun stories. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks. It was really nice. It was really nice. Very good.
For our listeners, if you'd like to suggest a guest, ask a question, or give us any ideas for episodes or content, you can reach out to me, Keith Norris, on LinkedIn. And Cheryl, where can people find you?
So my website is Lean Leadership Center. So www.Lean Leadership Center, or you can reach me on LinkedIn. Cheryl Jekiel at LinkedIn is easy enough. Key
Thank you
places
so
to find
much.
me.
And this concludes this episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to add a comment, like, follow, subscribe on all the socials, share the podcast with friends and colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change. This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.